Good evening, folks. It is Wednesday again, and that means it's the return of the ARCA Racing Podcast. I'm your host, Colby Evans, a.k.a. Starting Parker on Twitter, and we have a fun show for you guys today. It's no reviewing. It's just a preview show. We got the big ARCA and ARCA West race at Phoenix. It's one of my favorite races of the year. We got a lot of storylines to cover for the intro race. West Series picks for this year. What the main series championship is going to look like, storylines going into this race, storylines possibly coming out of this race, what the West field could look at. A lot to talk about today, guys. So I'll do my little intro I do for every show, and we'll get right into it. So you guys know the drill. Follow me on social media at Starting Parker on Twitter if you're a fan of the lower tier teams in terms of information, seeing Starting Park picks from the past. I'm your guy. Give me a follow. Like and subscribe to the channel. We are only 15 subscribers away from the magic number 1,000, guys. 15 subscribers. And then we'll have our big 1,000 subscribers show and giveaway. And of course, check out my friends Brock Beard and NASCAR Man, two of my good friends on social media. They have great YouTube channels as well. And check out theracingexperts.com for all NASCAR media related content. Those are my media friends as well. All right. Whew, long intro. Let's get right into it, shall we? So the ARCA and ARCA West combo race at Phoenix. Like I said, one of my favorite races of the year for sure. Definitely, it's always put on a good race, even when, you had like the dominance of Ty Gibbs back in 2021, and even going back to the late K&N days, it still put on a good race. It's good to see that many cars out there on track, trying to be competitive, trying to really give it their all, and it's an entertaining race to watch. Sometimes it can be a crap show. I think the 2020 race was maybe not the best performance. 2021 was definitely a lot better. And last year's race, I think overall was the best of all. Last year's race was good. We had 39 starters last year. Not the biggest entry list. And frankly, I was a little shocked. Some reports were saying that this race might even have DNQs. At most, I heard 38. But I was quite surprised to see that there was only 33 cars on the entry list for this race. Kind of expected kind of about 20 cars from each division, so to say. That's kind of how some people were putting it. They would get about maybe 18, 19 West and around maybe 16 to 20 main series entries. Still a really decent entry list. I mean, it's not like, 33 cars won't put on a good show. We still got plenty of competitive cars. We still got plenty of mid-pack cars, and we got plenty of back-tier cars. And realistically, looking at this entry list, it looks like we only have about 2 starting parks. So right now, our odds of going into this race of having plenty of cars being able to be on track is going to be more than good enough. So let's get right into the entry list. Get right into the entry list. We have Andres Perez de Lara. Now, he will be making his technical debut for Rev, even though technically he was driving a Rev car at Daytona. It was under Andy Hillenberg, but technically this is his first real start for the season. That is going to be a dark horse entry, I think, for the win and in general, because he did lead quite a few laps in this race last year. And had Sammy Smith not had the dominant car, he had pretty much the other dominant car. We'll discuss his point situation in a minute. Eric Nascimento, obviously, he's been a mainstay of the West Series for a couple years now. That team is actually fielding 2 full-time entries in the circuit, the 4 and the 04. Sebastian Arias is not returning to the series. Ethan Nascimento will be driving the 04 full-time. So it's good to see Nascimento Motorsports expanding their division. I believe they were the leftovers of Velocity Racing. I think so. I'm not for sure, but I think that they were the leftovers of Velocity Racing after they went out of business and Jack Wood joined the Truck Series. Speaking of Jack Wood, he's in the 6 for Siegel Sport, and I'm not going to have to sponsor Velocity Racing. So it's kind of ironic right there. We got my man Takuma Koga, my favorite West Series driver. Takuma Koga, of course, in the 7. Tim Monroe, expect that to be one of the starting parks. Also, shout out to Tim Monroe, guys. He is driving the hauler, the fast track racing hauler, all the way down to Phoenix. So, badass of Tim Monroe. He really does it all, man. Whether you need him to go over the wall, whether you need him to spot, whether you need him to drive or drive the hauler. Tim Monroe is one of the coolest guys I've ever met, and he's just one of the nicest guys. If you're ever in the ARCA garage, try to find Tim Monroe. Bryce Hogberg, they will be racing a zombie Ford. I guess we can call them zombies now because with everyone running the new Ford Mustang nose. They're going to be running an old Fusion nose. D.L. Wilson, of course, in the 12. Mainstay in the West Circuit, Todd Souza. Sean Hingorani, of course, he's running full-time in both East and West. Tanner Ref, who we saw driving for Bob Brancotti last year, moves over to Bill McAnally in the 16. Landon Lewis in the 17. Kind of shocked. Landon Lewis did not do as good in the 16 as I thought he would last year, but it's good to see that he still landed a ride. This is the ride that he won with at Kern County last year, so it's a good piece. It's a good piece. Here's an interesting entry. William Solwich will drive the 18. Of course, he was been announced a long time ago. He won 20 races across all three divisions. This is his debut for Joe Gibbs, man, and I'm really curious to see how this goes. I'm really curious to see how this race goes. I'm really curious to see how this JGR ARCA team, Daytona happened, but this is, I believe, the first real race for this ARCA team, in my opinion, since unfortunately when we lost Coy Gibbs. Coy Gibbs was the main head for this ARCA team. And I'm really curious to see how this team will operate. Yeah, Daytona's Daytona. But in my opinion, this is the first real test for this team to see how they can operate, unfortunately, without Coy Gibbs. So I think that's going to be a little bit of an interesting thing to look at over the weekend as well. How William adapts to these ARCA cars, and will the 18 be as dominant? Will the 18 be as dominant as it usually is? We don't know, and I think it just kind of adds some anticipation for this race because, once again, we're going into this race just like Daytona. We're going into this ARCA race. I can't tell you who's going to win. And that's what I love to say. I love anytime I can go to a race or on this podcast and tell you guys it's not going to be a Venerini car. It's not going to be a JGR car. We don't know. That's always an exciting factor. In the chat, who's in charge of the JGR ARCA team now? I don't know. I don't know. Jesse Love, of course, in the 20, obviously running full time. Ryan Roulette, great to see that team. He's kind of been with the Last Chance Racing team, kind of a partnership deal. Great to see him out there in his first, not necessarily his first start, but I think his first West start for his own organization. Connor Jones, of course, longtime driver for Venerini at this point. Good old Bobby Hillis. And man, it sucks that Bobby Hillis doesn't really have the money to run full time anymore, but obviously, with the way the world is right now, especially over there on the West Coast, it's not surprising that Bobby can only afford the 2 Phoenix races because they are the closest to his home. But it's good to see that Bobby's going to be out there with his 27 car, and he will not start in park. He will be running the whole race. I still got Bobby's phone number from when we had him on the show a couple years ago, and yep, he has full intentions to run the race. He wouldn't show up just to start in park, even if it's for 2 races a year. So expect Bobby to run the whole thing, which is great to see. Frankie Muniz with the coolest sponsor of the weekend, the Hot Chick. I think that's a really cool sponsor name. Frankie Muniz. Again, they say Daytona's Daytona, man. This is a real test. This is a long race, 150 laps at a 1-mile track, one of the longer ARCA races of the season. We're going to have one of the biggest non-plate race fields of the season. So I think this right here is a really, really big test for Frankie Muniz this weekend. Because more than likely, let's see here, outside of – actually, I think more than likely this will be the biggest non-super speedway field of the year. So really curious to see how Frankie does. Really, really curious. I would estimate, based on what the capability of that 30 car, top 15, top 10 finish. That's what we should get out of Frankie, because that car is capable of that type of run. Christian Rose, of course, in the 32, one of our full-time runners. Another one of our full-time runners. Another full-time runner in Greg Van Alst, Daytona winner. Unfortunately, the car is a little bit unsponsored, but hey, hopefully we can get a little bit more sponsorship from him in the future. Tyler Ref, the brother of Tanner, he'll be running for Loudon Jackson Motorsports full-time in the 41. Of course, Tony Cosentino in the 45. RJ Smotherman, and another Chris Loudon entry. Brad Smith. Now, cool, guys saw on Twitter, Brad Smith will be debuting the Ford. Yes, he finally got the Ford done with help from Renegade Race Cars and Rick Tackman Jr. They finally got the Ford done, and it will be making his debut. However, I do expect it to start in park as with a 33-car field, and Brad's never really been the biggest fan of Phoenix in general in terms of driving the track. I think Brad will probably run about a full fuel run and then pull in. I don't think he's just going to run 3 laps. I think he's going to run about a full fuel run, and then he's going to probably call it a night. We got Trevor Huddleston. Now, of course, the Huddleston family has bought out the assets of Sunrise Ford Racing. So Trevor Huddleston and that team, kind of ironic, the team that Trevor used to drive for and then got released from and then created their own organization with help from Brucati, now has purchased the assets of Brucati. Doesn't it all just come around at some point? Like, how ironic is that? But so that they had bought the assets. They were rumored to run 2 full-time cars, but as of now, there's only 1. But it is possible we might see a second car down the line. Down the line, of course. 55, of course, Tony Breidinger in one of her scheduled races of the season. The final fast-track entry with the partnership of Veer Motorsports with John Garrett. The other Jerry Pitts Motorsports entry of Kyle Keller. Naki Kluwer Motorsports, the 88 of Bradley Erickson. No 54 entry of Joey East. Kind of sucks to not see that team around anymore, just the 88. Leland Honeyman, great to see. Now, again, the way they have the entry list is they have the 02, like the 08, the 06 numbers at the very bottom, so that's why they're a little out of order. Leland Honeyman, great to see him and Young's Motorsports back together again, obviously with Young's Motorsports. No truck race this weekend. So why not go out west and see what you can do? So, Young's Motorsports has always had a pretty decent ARCA program. Not a winning ARCA program, but a decent ARCA program. Leland's definitely gotten better. He definitely got the most anyone else has ever gotten out of one of the Young's Motorsports ARCA cars. And, based on how, Taylor Gray and Sammy Smith were in the E-Series last year, I thought to an extent, Leland was able to hold his own in a decent capacity. So I'm curious to see how that car will run. Obviously, Alex Clubb and his Ford, new Ford for this year. Ethan Nascimento, as we mentioned earlier. David Smith, not the David Smith you're thinking of, the British Columbia David Smith. And, of course, A.J. Moyer and Wayne Peterson Racing will be the last entrant. So 33 cars in total. Starting parks, again, expected to be the 10 and the 48, which would leave 31 cars running the whole distance, which is more than enough, way more than enough to run full-time. These Phoenix races can usually get a little chaotic. Looks like we did have some cars withdraw. Normal West Series competitors that I can tell already that are not on this entry list, Last Chance Racing. Now, you can follow them. They only have a Facebook, but they're pretty active on it. And Andrew Tuttle, I feel for Andrew Tuttle. He's just a small team, budget guy trying to make it in the West Series. I'm sure you guys saw it last year. I talked about it many times. His poor 39 car, his engine started to die out. And, man, he tried to keep running races, try to fill out the season, whether it was just running one lap, but the engine just eventually died to the point where I think they legitimately brought the car to the track, knowing it wouldn't fire, and just tried to run the pace laps anyway just to get credit. That's ballsy, in my opinion. And, of course, the 85 of Vince Little. Ironically, Vince has been trying to sell that car for the better part of a year and a half. Hasn't been able to, so he's just kept running it. But we did lose those 2 cars, but still 33 cars, more than enough for a good field. Last year, of course, had 39. Last year's race was quite chaotic, just spins and crashes all over the place. Still had some pretty decent long green flag runs, and it was a pretty good race between last year's. We had Taylor Gray, who at that time they had just lost hauler driver Steven Stotts. Daniel Dye and Sammy Smith and Raja Caruth. I mean, they all put on a great show last year. But, man, even you look at a year ago from now, and it's just, boy, it's a lot different. Oh, yeah, Blue Valor Whiskey Racing in the chat. Yeah, with Chris Loudon, they were going to run too. So a lot of West Series potential full-time cars that were going to show up will not run this race. Kind of sucks, but, again, it's okay. More than enough. Our point standing is coming into this race, obviously, with no West Series action yet. We can't judge that series yet. Although looking at the entry list and full-time West Series competitors, I would easily say that the championship right now, it's going to either be Bradley Erickson or Tanner Reff or Todd Souza. Now, of course, my personal choice, Todd Souza. Everyone knows I'm a big Todd Souza fan. I don't know who isn't a Todd Souza fan. Everyone loves Todd Souza in the West Circuit. But our point standings for the main division, obviously Greg Van Alst is leading the points. Now, in terms of full-time drivers, Greg Van Alst is first, even though it was reported that Mandy Chick wanted to run the whole year. They couldn't get the funding for Phoenix, so she will not be running the whole year. Therefore, she will not be in contention for the championship. So the next person in the championship is Jessie Love down in 7th. Jessie Love down in 7th is 10 points behind. So, this is a real opportunity race for Jessie Love to really kind of retake over the championship lead. And for Greg Van Alst, you got to wonder how they are approaching this season. Are they approaching this season? For a championship run, or are they approaching this season to get through the season because they are struggling with sponsorship? And I think we'll see that with how Greg races this weekend. Does he be aggressive, try to keep the points lead, or does he play it conservative, just try to get through Phoenix? Because apparently it's going to be Souza's last year as a full-time driver. Damn, that would suck. But, there just comes a time where, sometimes the funding gets too small for you, or you just, you kind of get burnt out. But man, that would suck to have to be Souza's last year. The other full-time drivers, I believe our next one, let's see, if Jessie Love is second, the third one would be Frankie Muniz. He would be in third, and he is 14 points behind. Christian Rose is fourth, also 14 points behind. And the best part is Tony Cosentino is actually fifth in full season points, 18 points behind. That's pretty funny. Is Bryce Hogberg full-time? If he is, he's 19 points behind. I don't remember if they confirmed that Bryce was full-time or not. And then the next one down would be John Garrett. He is 28 points behind. And, of course, AJ Moyer, I believe, is trying to put together a full season for now, but we'll leave him out for now. And then, of course, Brad Smith down 33 points behind. And I believe those are the confirmed full-time drivers. So obviously for people like Christian Rose and Frankie Muniz, who are really the only other I feel strong contenders for the championship, being that many points out early, you can say, are they eliminated from the championship right now? Yes and no. Again, it just kind of dictates on how this race goes. Jessie Love has had great success at Phoenix in the past. I will say, though, his runs for McAnally were nothing special. But his run last year in the West Series finale, he was the second best car next to the 18. So I think it's safe to say Jessie Love might be the car to beat this weekend. We still don't know that for sure. Like I said, I think the two Rev entries, especially Jack Wood, I think Jack Wood and Andres will give him a good run. If you want an honest pick, I'm still going to go with William Solich, but I don't think the 18 is going to be as dominant as it was. But I think William is still going to get it in the end. But yeah, so in terms of the full season championship, I'm just curious on how Greg Van Alst does approach this season. They've said, we saw that in Daytona, that their fence company acquires about 75% of their budget. Now, they did post online their sponsorship, and it does make me wonder, are they okay for sponsorship for the season and they're just searching for something else? And I think that's kind of the case. I think Greg Van Alst's team is okay for the season, but obviously you want more sponsorship. Because if they're unsponsored, well, they'll show up nonetheless, but maybe they're not going to race as hard, and maybe they're not going to, maybe Greg's not going to leave everything out there because, you got to understand you're going to have to keep this car for the next race. Whereas, you go back to Daytona, it's not like they were full of sponsors at Daytona, but they had some decent sponsors at Daytona where they could maybe be a little bit more risky, go for the win. And look what happened. They won, which was, again, fantastic. It was great. But really curious to see how the 35 races this weekend for sure. I think to an extent he'll be aggressive, but he's also not going to put himself in serious situations. Whereas, the 20 team does have the ability to be aggressive and put themselves in serious situations. And, like some people are saying, once Jessie Love gets that points lead, he's probably not going to lose it. Well, we do have Talladega coming up. And that will likely be the last huge field of the season. And we all know what happened back in 2021. Ty Gibbs nearly lost the championship due to a poor finish at Talladega. And that could happen again. Interesting, though, I think the battle will mainly be for second in the championship between we still could have a possibility of Frankie Muniz finishing second in the championship, which would still be pretty cool as well. And again, like usual, I think the main battle with the ARCA Series championship will be the Owners' Championship. And from that retrospective, obviously Greg Van Alst and the 35 team are still leading the Owners' Championship. The Joe Gibbs team is second in the Owners' Championship with the two Rev entries, other full-time entries, two Rev entries. Fourth, the 15, the highest Venerini entry is in sixth, and then seventh. So it's like we got all these full-time Owners' Championship entries all over the place. So I think both driver and Owners' Championships will still provide us with some great battles this season. My only concern, and I haven't talked about Andres. He wasn't allowed to race Daytona, but he was allowed to make his one practice lap just so he was allowed to get the 50-point bonus every 5 races. Okay, so he got his 3 points for doing his practice lap, but he's 44 points behind the leader. Now, we have 20 races to go through, so obviously that can change. And luckily for Andres, the guy that more than likely he will be racing for the championship, Jesse Love, he is only 34 points behind Jesse Love. He's 44 points behind Greg Van Alst, but he's only 34 points behind Jesse Love. Now, the key to gaining, though, is he's got to finish ahead of him. So it's going to be interesting to see throughout this year where Andres will get those points ahead of Jesse, because there are some tracks where he has the advantage versus tracks that maybe Jesse has the advantage. In terms of payouts for this race, obviously, if you guys want to look at the entry blank yourself, you can guys go find it on the ARCA competitor website. First place is $10,000, but with all the contingency awards, the top potential for money is $18,650 for first, $9,315 for second, and $5,250 for third. Last place is a miserable $1,400. I know we can all crap on that, but it's been like that for a long time. I wish it would change too. Trust me, I wish. Those are your payouts for this race, of course. And it, of course, is on Friday. Now, so we've gone over the main ARCA side, and we look at the West Series drivers in this field. The Nascimentos, Koga. I don't know if Kyle Keller's full-time or if this is just a one-off deal in the 70. Tanner Raff, Sean Hingorani, Landon Lewis. I'm not sure if this is full-time. Not sure if he's full-time in the 17. I hope he is, because if he is, then we really will have a championship battle. We got the Loudon Jackson team, which actually bring a pretty decent piece. Like last year, it's great to see that we have so many full-time West Series competitors, but what is the series going to look like? What I just counted there was maybe about 10, 12, 13, 14 cars. I don't know how many car counts we're going to get last year. Last year, we struggled with car counts. At some points, we had a couple West races last year where we saw 2020 numbers, only 13 cars, where then we saw some West Series fields with over 25, with over 35. So, Sonoma, of course. Sonoma will be a big field, but that's always a big field. But for some of these races this year, I hope we can get these car counts back up. Seeing kind of a lack of West Series entries, obviously I can understand not everyone can make it to the first race of the season, and a lot of the West Series is made up of part-time efforts, and we did lose a lot of teams. The Pedroncelli's shut down, Sunrise Ford shut down, so that didn't help anything. Yeah, I can agree. Irwindale doesn't need 2 races. Even if the track is entertaining, Irwindale, I can agree, doesn't need 2 races. I will say though, if NASCAR ever wants, if they're not going back to Auto Club, there's a perfectly good track in Kern County or Irwindale for them to race at. God, seeing those, imagine the Cup cars at Irwindale. That would be a show. That would be a freaking show. I would probably sell out. That would be a great race. No one can deny me that. Those next-gen Cup cars on that short track with the high line being progressive, that'd be a good one. Pedroncelli, I heard, might be going to Sonoma. Well, Pedroncelli is not back on a full-time basis, is what I'm trying to say. And it sucks because, man, after their 2021 championship run, it's like they threw everything at that 2021 run, and then it's like it just was never the same. It was just never the same. We need the West Series at the LA Coliseum. I agree. I agree. I know it maybe is not possible, but, and I said this, a couple months ago when NASCAR was about to start the season, why can't the West Series run a support race? I know why, because it would probably be a better race. I mean, you only get probably 25, 20 cars, 25 ARCA West cars, maybe some full-time entries, full series entries. Those teams couldn't afford that. I mean, why? Tell me why they couldn't afford that. They're telling me in the chat they can't afford that. Why? What's the difference between them going there and then going to All-American Speedway and tearing the same crap up? So it's like I don't understand what everyone's like. They can't afford that. They do the exact same thing at these other short tracks. Why couldn't they afford it at the Coliseum? Just have them run a support race the day earlier. Yeah, I don't understand that. Yeah, and everyone else in the chat's just putting up together good thoughts about where the ARCA West Series was going. Obviously, they said that both the ARCA West Series and East Series, they want to get those series back up in higher ranks of races. Like, talking to PR Charlie Crawl, ARCA PR Charlie Crawl, he wants to get the East Series back up to 14, 15 races, which is exactly what it needs. And it needs to run at tracks that the main series doesn't to really sell the appeal. And I would say the same thing for the West Circuit. Now, the West Circuit's not doing as bad as the East Series is. The West Series is up to what? 12 races, 11, 12 races this year. But I feel like we need to get the West Series back up to about 15 races to really set a good standard. Now, we are going to some different tracks this year that we haven't been to in a while as well. So that'll be a lot of fun. But yeah, in terms of this Phoenix race, I think it's going to be chaos as usual. We have seen these Phoenix races be pretty chaotic with some big crashes, some great racing. My personal pick, like I said, to win, we talked earlier, I'm picking William Solich. My underdog pick for this race, an honest underdog pick will be Andres, even though it's not an underdog car. It is my underdog pick. But yeah, so in terms of the West Series for this year, the championship looks good. Yeah, I can't pick an early championship favorite for those guys. The one thing, though, that we have seen every year in these big races, these combo races, is that the higher teams, the main series teams, usually just destroy the West teams. The last couple of times we've seen this race, like even going back to last year, the McAnally cars, they barely cracked the top 10. The highest West entry team was, I believe it was either Josh Berry. Yes, Josh Berry was in this race last year. I know, hard to believe. Who was in 8th. And then Jake Drew was 5th. But that just shows you how awesome Jake Drew was. It really is a shame that, this guy dominated the 2022 season. Jake Drew led all these laps, dominated every single race. He didn't win every single one of them. Won the championship by hand. And has just gotten nothing out of it. It's such a shame. But that's the nature of this business sometimes. I compare what happened to him kind of what happened to Austin Terry. He had that unbelievable season at Ken Schrader in ARCA in 2017, won all these races, won the championship, and then has done nothing ever since. Nothing came of it. Yeah, I don't know, man. But it just sucks to see Jake Drew, with nothing. But yeah, what I'm trying to say is a lot of these West Series teams really can't hang with the main series teams. And that's not that's not a knock at them at all. It's just, you look at the results of the combo races and even the West Series finale races where we see West teams enter, you just don't see the McAnally teams. You don't see the Jerry Pitts Racing or Todd Souza being able to run top 5. You just don't see it. They're around top 10, top 15, but you just don't see them running up front. Kind of the same with the East Series as well. When they do their combo races at like Milwaukee, you really see that some of the standalone East Series teams kind of can't hang with the main series teams, and they kind of struggle. in the mid card of the pack. And unfortunately, I think we're going to see that again. If there are any West entries in this field that I really, really think that can bring it to the main series division, guys, obviously Todd Souza. I want to say Landon Lewis at the same time. And Trevor Huddleston and Leland Honeyman would be the West Series entries. I guess you could technically count Leland Honeyman as a main series entry, but just for the sake of it, I'm going to count him as a West. Yeah, I mean, you could say the same thing that Tanner and BMR, but BMR really struggled last year with their Chevrolets. And the shocking part is that BMR is only there with one car. That is probably one of the biggest shocker of all is, Bill McAnally, who, at some points they would run 4 cars, is only here with one car. The 99 this year will not be full-time. And I would honestly say that that is the biggest shocker of the entire ARCA West Series season. Even last year, they were running 4 cars, not full-time, but at some of the races last year. So it's a real shocker to see a team like Bill McAnally, who you'd never think a team like Bill McAnally would struggle with funding to keep 2 cars going. And it really shows you that even though he's got some sponsorship from Napa, because I think Bill owns a couple of Napa franchise stores, that even then it's still not enough. And it shows you that just how much money is required to put into that truck team that maybe they just don't have enough left for the ARCA team. But I think that's probably one of the saddest things looking at this entry list is not even 3, not even 2, but just one lone full-time entry out of the Bill McAnally circuit. And I hope that's not a sign of things to come. I really hope that is not a sign of things to come for Bill McAnally and they just focus on the truck team. I don't want to see that happen because the ARCA team, K&N West Series, the Winston West Series, Bill's been around for a long, long time. And it would really suck to see his team dry up. And it's just down to just the one primary 16 entry. But unfortunately, that's the nature of the beast. And it really just goes to show you, man, how important extra sponsorship dollars and paid drivers are in this business when a team like Bill McAnally cannot afford to bring the 99 car. That really says a lot about how much money is required to run in the series and be competitive. And that's not a knock on the series. It's just the harsh reality of the series. It's not meant to be a knock. It's not meant to be rude at all. It's just the harsh truth that a team that at one point ran 4 cars last year in a couple races is now only running 1 full-time car this year. Now, I didn't think I liked Cole Moore, but I didn't think he was really anything special in the 99 car. He did get 1 win last year. I don't remember where. Was it All-American? He dominated the Bill McAnally Drivers Academy, but, there were only 3 full-time cars in there, so, really, what did he do? But, in general, was it a success for him to be in there? We don't know. So it sucks to see only 1 McAnally entry, but again, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? So that's probably the biggest shocker. Kyle Keller, great to see him back. He was supposed to run full-time last year. I don't remember for which organization, but all of a sudden, that ended very quickly. And thankfully, Kyle Keller got picked up by Jerry Pitts Racing. It was weird. Jerry Pitts Racing was running a Toyota with Takuma Koga, but was running a Ford. Was running a Ford with Kyle Keller. But then, of course, then it was kind of told me into Ilmores a lot that Ilmores are basically kind of the same thing and that it's just kind of different bodies. But then, of course, what I've always also been told is that a lot of teams are running Yates motors in the ARCA West Series. Even teams like the 18 have run Yates motors because they are a little bit cheaper than the Ilmores. That was told to me at Daytona. But I think that's a cool kind of thing that there actually is a second motor in ARCA. I did not know that until about the beginning of the season. Have you investigated McAnally's reasoning? I have not. It's just speculation at this point. But, it's just, you can assume it. That's what the fun part of the show is. It's what the fun part of this show is. Obviously we don't know all the answers, but speculation is a lot of previewing. I don't know. I'm sorry, but that's just kind of my take on it. But yeah, so that's kind of the general tire 150 at Phoenix. Lots of storylines. The West Series always looks like it's going to have a good field. The the main show series should always put on its good race as usual. In terms of, like I said, I've said it multiple times. Who's going to crew chief for the 18? Again, you guys can look on the entry list for that, but I'll tell you it's Matt Ross. I am not familiar with that name. And it is kind of sad to see that the owner is officially Joe Gibbs listed as the owner. Is Mark McFarland around anymore? That is an interesting question. I honestly do not know that. It kind of sucks to see Mark McFarland not around. It's weird because you're just so used to these partnerships coming together. And then, it's like when they separate, you're like, wow, we were together for so long and it's just not the same anymore. So, but yeah, and then that's why I'm interested. And that's why I said earlier, guys, I'm interested to see how the 18 team really does operate this weekend, with the possibility, that they may not run as good. We don't know for sure. Daytona was the first race of the season, but I really say this is the first test for them, for sure. So yeah, it's going to be a great race this weekend, of course, guys. Obviously, you guys can catch it live on FS2 because every ARCA race is live this year, which is probably the best dang news I can keep spitting out, because why not? It's the best, one of the best ARCA news of the year. FS2 live Friday, March 10th, 8 p.m. Eastern. I think Jamie Little going to be on the call for that one. I'm not sure, but I believe so. Anyway, guys, I'm going to get out of your hair. Not our longest show, but again, just these preview shows tend to not be as long as the preview and race review shows. But I thank you guys for joining me tonight. Remember, guys, we're at 985 subs. We're only 15 away from our big 1,000 subscriber giveaway. Of course, we'll be giving away 5 prizes from my personal racing collection. And yeah, I want to give it away for you guys because you guys are the best fan base and you guys make all of this possible. Thank you all so much. And I will see you guys tomorrow for Backmarker Battles review of Las Vegas and our Backmarker Battles preview for Phoenix. So we'll see you all tomorrow. So long, guys.